Welcome to another ALCTS webinar in our Institutional Repository series. I'm Pamela Blue, Chair of the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee. Today's webinar is presented by Marianne Buehler, the Urban Sustainability Librarian and Administrator of the Institutional Repository at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Prior to joining UNLV's library faculty, she was the Repository Manager at Rochester Institute of Technology. In addition to her repository experience, she has been involved in managing scholarly communication processes, open access journal publishing, traditional as well as self-publishing, and copyright. Marianne presents at regional and national conferences and has published on copyright and plagiarism, open access publishing, and institutional repositories. She received her undergraduate degree from the University of Maine and an advanced degree in Information Resources and Library Science from the University of Arizona. The title of Marianne's presentation is Engaging Your Campus in Utilizing Institutional Repositories. Her experience with repository development and management at RIT and UNLV has taught Marianne how challenging it is to acquire content for the IR. Her presentation will focus on developing successful marketing strategies for engaging administrators, faculty, and staff, and students to buy into the institutional repository concept, identifying best practices for garnering IR content, and lobbying for the development of open access mandates. Marianne will respond to as many questions as time permits at the conclusion of her presentation. Please type your questions into the question box on your screen. Today's session will be recorded, and you will receive an email with a link to the recording shortly after the conclusion of the webinar, together with a copy of Marianne's slides. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Marianne, and there may be a slight delay as I do that.
Thank you, Pamela, for inviting me to talk about engaging various stakeholders on campus in using an IR. I want to say good morning and good afternoon, depending on your time zone, and just a few bits of information about my experience and what I'm actually doing at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas at this point in time. We use Digital Commons. I do have experience with using DSpace when I was at RIT. And staff, we have a tech services, one part-time person that assists with metadata. I have one 80% person, and I also have one student. And I meant to list my intern. I just had an intern from San Jose.
Marianne, excuse me, this is Pamela. Could you show your screen, please?
Oh, let's see. Whoop, hang on. Let's see. How's that?
Better. Perfect.
Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I'm going to focus on RIT and UNLV institutional repository experiences, because some of them are the same and some of them have been different. I'm going to focus on IR success. I feel like benefits and success are simultaneous words and activities that we should correlate with any repository activity. So I'll talk about some institutional repository best practices with all university players and focus on the garnering of IR content and some of the easier and the best ways of doing that. And marketing strategies, developing open access mandates are essential. So you have an IR, and what's next? The repository has been created, and there is now a commitment to have content as soon as possible and employ successful marketing strategies. I believe it's essential to reach out and build relationships around the campus, be as creative as possible, and efforts will bring in content, maybe not immediately, but eventually it will. I found that focusing on strategic colleagues on campus creates movement in the repository, and that movement can be viral. And engaging people in the IR benefits, what benefits them, what benefits their department, their college, their university, that brings in content also. And we know there are campus outliers, such as centers, there may be a speaker series, there's laboratories that are doing research, partnerships in interdisciplinary areas, and there's always other entities on campus that are looking for ways to promote their research, and they want their work to remain viable but also visible. I found that once there is one or a few mandates, additional mandates are easier to garner and grow. There seems to be a scholarship competition factor among colleges, departments, and faculty. We'll talk about what sells deans on mandates, what engages them in making that big movement that deans usually don't like to mandate very much for their colleges. And people and situations change all the time in an academic environment. A dean may leave and a new dean may be hired that values open access, where the previous dean may not have valued open access enough to encourage faculty to participate. So I'm just going to talk about my varied and similar experiences at RIT and UNLV and hope that there'll be some information that is helpful. So it's valuable to connect with the Strategic Campus Repository collaborators. When I arrived at UNLV at the very end of 2009, within a month I set up a meeting with the Urban Sustainability Director and the Vice President for Research, and the Dean of the Graduate College was also there. And the Sustainability Director, he knows everyone involved with sustainability, and he is very good at helping connect or refer people to me and back the other direction. And since I'm the sustainability librarian, that's my area of that I collect in and work in, and so that particular urban sustainability initiative, those people really want to put their materials out. As we know, sustainability is a big issue in the academic environment. It's an area that every university is trying to work hard to get their scholarship out there, but also their activities in the public view. When I also was talking to the Vice President for Research, he gave me a list of administrators and faculty who profusely publish to connect with. And we also ended up archiving his research, which was good. It's always good to have an example to say, well, the Dean of the Graduate College, Vice President, he has his materials in the repository. And he pointed me to the Associate Vice President for Research. And it's his job to know what every faculty member is doing for research on campus. And I talked to him. He offered his help in addition to us archiving his scholarship. So he told me at any time he would connect me to the most prolific authors on campus, since that's what his job is to know. So those are very good connections. There are directors of the Brookings Mountain West, which is part of the Brookings Institute think tank out of Washington, D.C., and they're also wanting to push their scholarship, their activities out into the public more than just on a web page. So Dr. Brown, who is the director, he keeps me apprised of new and available materials, whether they're talks, publications, conferences, and he also suggests other research for the repositories. So what the biggest piece that I've learned in these 4 examples is it's really helpful to have endorsements from people that are in a position of power, so to speak, to be able to say, so-and-so told me to contact you about this great scholarship opportunity, and he or she thought you would be interested, and they become instantly engaged because they know that they need to toe the line for the people who are above them, and it just piques their interest if something's that valuable coming down the line of command. The Associate Dean of the grad college is also the ET administrator, and I also connected with her when I arrived at UNLV, and there was no mandates for ProQuest ETDs to also be published in the repository. So we've worked together on developing ETD policy, whether it's with ProQuest or for the repository. And I gave her text that she added to her website, and so it's really become, you know, really a working relationship that is valuable for ultimately for the university, but also the graduate students. The ETDs have opened the door for other student works. When I talk to different faculty and department heads, and there's a lot of poster sessions that go on here at UNLV, and there's undergrad, there's grad posters, and they see that there's already grad work in the repository, so they want to make sure that their grad students are showcased, because it reflects back on their department and their college, besides, you know, showcasing the students' research. And also we have different departments have capstones and professional papers as their final graduate project, and so we're also being asked to showcase and archive them in the repository. And of course the library liaisons, they are invaluable. They know what college initiatives are going on usually. Sometimes I can pass information back to them just because of just talking to a faculty member, but they also know what the faculty are researching, and because they are a known quantity in their college, they can request a short open access presentation for a faculty department or just an informational meeting, which I've been able to work with in liaisons here. On and off-campus collaborations, I think can be very strategic, because there's so many faculty who are working with off-campus partnerships. And here at UNLV, of course, I mentioned the urban sustainability and the Brookings Mountain West, and you know, they have the conferences, the articles, MP4s, MP3s. They have posters. And so these sustainability partnerships across the state and in the Intermountain region contribute to the research that's valuable to people here at the university. So that's when the new Nevada State Transportation Office, it turned out that I was presenting to an engineering department, and they work with Nevada State Transportation, and they want to have some of their scholarship and their sustainable transportation research in the repository. Same with the Clark County Conservation Office. My intern, who just left yesterday, she's been here spring semester. She actually connected us together, and with her conservation department and the repository. So she is uploading and archiving some materials, you know, art research materials and documentation from their office into the repository. The Clark County and Las Vegas and Henderson we're all in a tight little area in southern Nevada, and they are very interested in continuing the relationship of sending documents my way, or I can harvest them off their website for sustainability. What we've done, just to give you a quick background, is in the repository, if you go in there, we have an area, a community that is government documents and business documents, and then it breaks out into the various areas of what we consider out in the Intermountain West concerns and issues, and it has to do with water, energy, transportation, conservation. So faculty and students can go directly to that community and find research that would be valuable to them. As we all know, government documents are really elusive at times, and that gray literature is really important if we can collect it in a particular area that we focus on here at UNLV. Yucca Mountain, we have a lot of their documentation. I'm not sure how many of you may know about Yucca Mountain, but it was supposed to be the nuclear waste facility of the United States, and it was closed down last September. So our special collections in the library was given boxes and boxes of that documentation. So we're going to be going through that, and some of it is proprietary, but whatever isn't, we will be able to add in the repository under that heading. There's also the Greater Western Library Alliance. It's a library group in the West, and an academic library group, and they have a repository called Western Waters, and they deal with water issues in the West. And what they do is they link out to other repositories. So that's something that we're working on with them, is just for them to point to our water docs. So building relationships on campus is really important. It's great to have off-campus ones also, but on campus, this is where we work, and we interact with a lot of people. As we all know, on our email systems, we get emails introducing maybe a new publication. There might be a conference that's being supported by a department or the university. Research information is coming out, notice of presentations, various types of initiatives. And I always keep an eye on those emails, because that is like a breadcrumb trail right back to the person who is doing it to connect with whoever that is, if it's a department or an individual, and talk about, would they be interested in showcasing their materials in the repository. As an example, when I was at RIT, there was a new publication that was sent out via the email to all staff, and it's not the most exciting publication. It's the Institute Audit, Compliance, and Advisement newsletter, but that is very important to every single department that's not a college, and the colleges, because it's integral information that they need to have. Excuse me. So I emailed the editor, who's also the sender of the email, and I said, this is a great newsletter. It would be fabulous to have a larger readership, and would you like to have it archived in perpetuity with a URL that never changes? And we'd be glad to add it to the institutional repository. So he sent me an issue. I had it archived. I sent him the link, and he was really excited. And within a week, we had all the rest of them archived. And I find that, again, it's all about the benefits. When people see benefits of getting whatever they're doing out into the world, it's a positive. And I find that no one has ever turned me down in any time I've ever asked for publications, because if somebody's publishing something within the university, they really seem to want to push it out. When I arrived here again at UNLV, I've only been here a year and a half, so it wasn't that long ago that I arrived. I was at a conference within a couple months of arriving, and I was introduced to the editor of the UNLV magazine. And we just started talking about the magazine, and I told her about the repository, and she was a little hesitant, but then, I sent her, from other places what it would look like from RIT. And it also, joins other UNLV scholarship in one location. I told her about the monthly stats that she could receive on the individual articles. For those of you who may not be familiar with Digital Commons, when somebody downloads the file that records has actually that somebody downloaded it. And those are the download reports that we get monthly. So she was very excited about it, and she recently emailed me to say she really likes receiving those monthly stats. And what's valuable to her, besides knowing that there is a readership out there, is she gets an understanding of what the most popular topics are. So it can help her with choosing future article topics that, that people are interested in. Let's see, we also, we created a short guide on how to access those stats for a particular collection, because to get those automatic emails you need to have an email address associated with the author's name. So people have to can manually go in to Digital Commons if they're added to that series or collection. So we've created a guide, and so now anyone has the option to be able to find their stats and know what they are on a monthly basis or however often they want to know. So what's really been great and what's been happening is now people are contacting me about conferences, adding them to the repository. Faculty really like to showcase the conference that maybe he or she organized or is a part of. And what I'd like to do is remind presenters who have given talks or conducted on-campus physical research, to make some kind of technical report or have some kind of record, because researchers who are interested in all the variations on a theme of research, they can't utilize that information without having attended a presentation, a conference, or visiting the campus. And this can be rich information and research. One of the examples that I've been working with on campus is the Barrick Museum, and they're part of the Harry Reid Center, and they host biweekly sustainability talks. And after the series, then the person emails me and says, "Oh, we've got these captured presentations," and so she intercampus mails the packets of DVDs. So that's another way of the Barrick Museum of pushing out some of the interesting activities that they host. And again, the liaisons tend to have a pulse on their colleges, and I have asked liaisons to invite both of us to present to numerous colleges, departments, and different meetings. By word of someone on campus, I heard that UNLV had an herbarium, and the person in charge was looking for an online venue for the herbarium work, having photographs and having the detailed information about the particular plant. And I quickly, emailed this person right away and talking about that the IR has a capability to highlight that work and archive it, record it, in perpetuity, and he definitely has us on the list to be involved when they get to that point. The last one, collaboration that I'd like to mention here is the Black Mountain Institute. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it's an international center for creative writers and scholars, and they're in various places around the world. And we happen to have one at UNLV. And it turns out that the IT department could not support the volume of their MP4 interviews and their podcasts, and so we met, and now we are the lucky recipient of all their really rich information and edgy kind of topics that they talk about. To sum up this slide, I basically talk to everyone on campus within the context of conversation, or I create the context of conversation. I'll ask faculty what they're working on, and I'm genuinely interested because it gives me more information of what's going on campus. So I engage them in the conversation about what they have and its importance to the university and beyond, because sometimes people just they don't see that that vision of how important their work is beyond getting tenure or publishing in a particular journal. Marketing. Marketing is so important, as we all know. I think that meeting with individuals and groups is a way to convey the enthusiasm and the commitment to open access. And there are always good stories to tell about, garnering content, because sometimes it comes in the most unusual, interesting, and satisfying ways. I like to make appointments wherever possible to meet with deans, associate deans, directors. I had a lot of opportunity for that at RIT, and I know that I'll have more opportunities here, but I haven't been here that long. But it's really, to be able to talk with them, just even if you end up sitting next to them, you're sitting next to them at a talk, and you're having chit-chatty conversation. It's, most of them don't know about open access and institutional repositories, so they like to keep a pulse on what's going on in the area of scholarship. Also, faculty, staff, invite a liaison to attend meetings. People come to my office, I go to their office, whatever works. My usual entree is, the library has created this great new tool. It showcases, their scholarships, their departments, and on up, through the whole process of the departmental hierarchy in a university, and also the student work. And we get online, and I should take them to the repository. They see how it works, and they can see other departments, other colleges, hierarchies, and the competition begins. Again, I talk always about the benefits. I've created a full-page document that has benefits that talk about faculty benefits, students, the university, and beyond. So if anybody's ever interested, you can email me. I'm glad to send you a copy of it. I like to get invited to departments or other types of meetings to present on the IR because one situation always leads into another. And I mentioned the Nevada transportation engineer previously, and he ended up bringing the librarian down from Carson City, and so they were glad to know that they could participate also. All right, the mandates. As we all know, that there's some universities have had, really wholeheartedly gone forth with, most of the colleges and many departments. Sometimes just library faculty will have their mandates. So it's all over the place. And my strategy for open access mandates at RIT was, when I talked to deans or associate deans, they wanted to know, well, how in the conversation, in the context, they wanted to know how, someone would mandate scholarship in a repository. And it's so basic, you just require it. That's all that it is. And of course, the metadata is added, and it's dependent on publisher copyright. The College of Science was the first mandate that occurred at RIT, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But it's amazing how viral mandates can be, which is why we've seen, I guess during Open Access Week, it was determined by Jennifer McLennan, the director, that there were more mandates during Open Access Week than ever have occurred. So that's really exciting. So that momentum really helps a lot. And then the next question the deans want to know about, or in some cases I've worked with associate deans who headed up the project, well, how do we get all our scholarship from our college into the repository? And, I always feel like options, people like options. It's always good to have them. And we usually use a CV both at RIT and at UNLV. Just point me to a CV or send me one via email. Individual items can be emailed, CDs, whatever works, whatever is easiest for the faculty. And in the repository staff that we have will request postprints, will contact publishers for permissions. We'll harvest from archive, personal websites. Wherever the materials are, we'll find them, and we will be glad to upload them into the repository. I like to focus on the fact that it's a collaboration also, because I think that's important for us all just to remember that we're working together, for the greater good of the university, and it feels good to know that it's a collaboration. So there is a value proposition of mandates, which is always good to talk about in context and with anyone who is interested, where the staff will do that work. And I find that once you have at least one mandate at a university, you can tell other deans and department heads while talking about the repository that who has that mandated scholarship. And as I mentioned, the College of Science, and it went from the College of Science, and then there are 8 colleges at RIT, and within 4 years, 5 out of the 8 colleges, the deans all mandated scholarship materials to be in the repository. So I guess there's something to be said about the competitive nature of scholarship on all different levels. And I've also, people have asked, well, I don't have the full text, or what if it's, not legally permissible to have my article, the full text in the repository. And I think that, given the nature of what we're all up against with the publishers, is, we have to take a step back and say, what, at this point, we can't have 100% full text, but what we can do is use the repository also as a discovery tool. And it's a bibliographic citation tool, and it's not optimum, but at least people can interlibrary loan, they can contact the author, they can try to find, the research in other ways when it's not available in the repository. And of course, we have the link resolver that can also point to full text. So on the ETDs mandating, that's a whole nother aspect than the college's mandating, because it has to do with the graduate school. And again, we need to have a value proposition presented for them to feel as though this is really important. And I believe from working with undergrads and grads, both at RIT and UNLV, that students are realizing that having that open access for their scholarship and their research is really great, because it's the career tool aspect. They can, for a current or a prospective employer, they can point to their research online. I know there are some aspects where, like especially for humanities and creative writing, but that's an anomaly. So students are really seeing the benefit for their own research, that I can get this in open access. This is fabulous. So I both at UNLV and RIT, I collaborated with the graduate deans. ProQuest, is interesting because at both universities they decided to subscribe to ProQuest, and then right on the heels of that was the open access, in the repository, having ETDs available, and they both were very similar in how they operated. But it was just like we took a leap to do ProQuest, so the open access it seemed to be a shoe-in both universities. But I did work with both the grad associate and the grad dean because it was something that it had to be worked out. All the details had to be worked out so that not only would the graduate students, but the deans and the faculty would buy into the whole process. At one point, before RIT bought into ProQuest and the IR ETDs, I presented to the Dean's Council and some of the of the faculty who are on it, you know, they thought, oh, this is really great, but there were other people who, other faculty and staff who, you know, they weren't that excited about it. I just don't think that they saw the benefits to anyone to make that effort. But then we got a new RIT provost, and so that provost and the library director, they collaborated, and it turned out that all the colleges contributed a certain amount of money to have these all scanned, and they're still uploading them because there was many thousands of them. But what we did is we had the Kirtas company, which is a scanning company, and they brought their operators right on site. Of course, they're like 20 minutes away from RIT, so it was an easy thing to do. So they were there for months, and it was a great project. One of the things that I've noticed about working with interim deans is they don't like to make major decisions. It's just something that they don't like to do. And I don't know if it's just an uncomfortability piece, or they've been told not to make any major decisions, but I find that I always have to wait until a permanent dean comes into a particular college. So I find that, you know, a college or an academic advocate can change that landscape of open access to make it be more positive, or it could go the other direction. But I feel as though at this point in time, with, you know, there's so many administrators, so many more administrators and faculty are more aware of open access, that there's more of an open mind, and the benefits are realized. So if someone leaves and then someone new comes in, like in this case, it was the new RIT provost, he really liked the idea of the retro RIT ETDs. Another example here was the RIT Senate minutes. The vice chair came and spoke to me, and he's like, you know, I know that, you know, we must have something, some software out in the universe or even here on campus where we can take all of our RIT Senate minutes and we can have them online and make them accessible to the whole RIT community. And he said there's been so many challenges with trying to find documents and file cabinets and who has them, and he really wanted to make that part of being the vice chair to make a difference and have these minutes so that they would be available and searchable. And so I mentioned in our conversation, I showed him two examples of two departments on campus that had their minutes, and he was so surprised. He said, you know, he said, how come I didn't know about this repository before? And it always amazes me when someone asks me that, because it's a really hard question to answer. I think I might have some consensus here that we're always continually marketing the IR venue, and I just don't know what to say to people, because we're pushing that information out as much as possible and in many different directions. And but the outcome was, well, he was really excited, and we created multiple academic senate collections, and it was so efficient to have them in the searchable, browsable environment. And the best part of all, from my point of view, is that the Senate Secretary, they have a meeting every 2 weeks. She sends an email with a document link, because she's already uploaded it into the repository, and she sends the link that links to the repository record to all of RIT faculty, staff, and students. I really felt like this was a turning point of the IR at RIT, because number one, the Senate is required to access the documents, and then all the faculty need to get in there for various reasons. We have student government that play an active role, and you know, some of the staff play active roles also. So there's information in there that's viable to them also. So now there are hundreds of people in the IR right after there's a link sent out to the RIT campus. And I have a feeling that they probably started perusing around other parts of the repository. So this is one of the best ways that the RIT community discovered the benefits of the institutional repository. So I'm trying to think of ways to do that here at UNLV. So in closing, I believe that that we, the library community, the academic community, that we finally are at a place where we don't need to have a question mark after build it and they will come. But I feel like we're here. It's only going to get better and stronger, and it's just a matter of time and our persistence as to showcasing what the repository can offer. So I want to thank you so much for attending the webinar, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. And I believe they need to be typed into the box on your screen. Okay, I'm seeing questions here. All right, this is a question. Taking all of those publications from the deans and into the repository, were these published articles? That's the first part of the question. Yes, they've all been previously published articles, and obviously, you know, we check the copyright on those. And yep, and that was the second part of the question. What about the copyright issue? So we use Sherpa Romeo. If Sherpa Romeo does not give us the information we need, we go to websites, and sometimes we contact the publishers. Sometimes, you know, our questions are answered on the website. And if we go to a website, whether it's a publisher or a conference website, and there is absolutely zero information about copyright belonging to the publisher, we archive the materials, and you know, we can always take them down, but if we need to. But the idea is if there's nothing there at all, that's our policy here. All right. The next question is, this is interesting, asking about urban sustainability. Where did that come from? I'm assuming it's because of, you know, what I do as a liaison. Urban sustainability has to do with, we have a lot of issues in urban areas, and of course we're focusing, in my case, out in the Intermountain West, and then most specifically at UNLV. And you know, it's a city environment. There's probably about 2.5 million people in the urban part of Las Vegas, and we have sustainability issues. Of course, we also have financial sustainability issues because we're #2 in the country for all sorts of issues that have to do with housing and jobs and just the economy of Nevada in general. But really it relates to water, to transportation, to people, to social services. So it is a rather new term, and I'm glad you asked about it. And ETD stands for e-thesis and dissertation. And I apologize, I did not talk about that acronym. All right, another question here. Do I and my assistants do all the inputting, or do we try to engage faculty to input themselves? That's a really good question because I'm pretty passionate about that. that question, the answer to that question, and that is I prefer that my staff archive all materials. And the reason why is for quality control. And I've noticed in repositories where anyone in the community is able to upload their materials. And everybody has to do what works for them. I'm not being critical, but the way I perceive a scholarly tool is that all the fields are filled out. You have as much rich metadata as possible. The spelling is correct. To make sure that the document is also attached, or we have a statement if on a document that if we can't have a full text, we say why we can't. So I really believe in us doing it here in the library, and each person, I have some more technical services staff coming on board to help me for part of their time on a daily basis, and everyone has a check person. So when someone uploads, they're supposed to, after they're in the upload area, on the template area, and then it shows up on the front end so the public can see it. I ask the person who uploaded to go to the site and to look at it and review it. And then there's someone else on the team who also reviews that work. Okay, who is repository staff? Let's see, I do not upload, but I'm managing a lot of other aspects. All the other aspects in the repository as far as creating collections, doing the marketing, doing some of the background work as far as connecting collections together, that kind of admin work. And I have a technical services person right now who's probably about 30% of her time is metadata. I mentioned I have 3 more technical staff people coming on board, and I told them they can do whatever they want. They just need to tell me what it is, and I'll set them to it. And so, some don't want to touch the copyright, some want to do the whole process, so it's all over the place. And then I have a student, and I have an 80% staff member, and I just had an intern, and I plan on having more interns as often as possible. And I also have applied for a Summer Business Institute student who is a high school graduate and is going off to college, has a high GPA, and that person hopefully will be working on the whole process from beginning to end on uploading materials. All right, the question is about the repository and where it is in the library structure. And I'm not sure exactly what you mean as far as the hierarchy, as far as how valued it is. Very honestly, we have not rolled this repository out yet for a variety of reasons, but the word is out, and so obviously we have more work than we can handle in any one week or month at this point. The IR is rather elevated in the repository because, in the library world, special collections are really important, and also with the current serials issues, as much scholarship as we can provide to our own community and beyond is really essential also. So I'd say we're on the more top end as opposed to being at the bottom. All right. Okay, somebody is asking me about a previous colleague of mine in Rochester, what kind of estimate of what this costs? And I was at Spark last year, November, as probably many of you were at the Spark conference, and there was a session on value and what things cost, and nobody ever came up with any costs, but stay tuned. I'm working with some of my colleagues on value, and we are coming up with a value stream for what it's going to cost. So I'll be able to tell you later on that. Okay, retrospective ETD scanning, about any worries about those and putting them out there without getting permission from the authors. Thank you for asking that question. It's a good one. What we did was I talked to 3 lawyers. I talked to two RIT lawyers, one on campus, one off. Peter Suber, who you all know who he is. I saw him at a conference at Cornell a number of years ago, and I talked to him personally because he's a lawyer. And I said, what do you think about us just wholesaling these up online, you know, scanning them? And so what concerns may we have? And all 3 of the lawyers were in total agreement that the students, for the greater good, their research for the greater good is that that's it. It's for the greater good of the university and for anyone else who will have the option to use that research. And they suggested spreading, you know, the word out, which is what we were going to be doing with these theses and dissertations and making them into ETDs. So I worked with the alumni office at RIT, and they sent an email out periodically, and I gave her the text about our project. And then we also had it on our website, in the library, in my area. And I think while I was there, the project had been underway for probably a year before I left, and there was only one student, and he was an art student and a graphics design, and he was concerned about his. But other than that, I think it's still going strong. And but it's just marketing what you're doing so everybody's aware and they can opt out if they so choose. All right, signing permissions to upload. Oh, so at this particular university, I'm not sure where, but students have to sign a permission to upload their theses into the IR, but they can opt out. And you're not digitizing historical theses. They don't have the author's permission. So I think I just covered that from the previous question. Managing restrictions to access for set groups, that's specific groups. There's in DSpace you can do that. You can do that in Digital Commons. You can probably do that in any other repository software. In the back end you can manage those restrictions. Digital Commons, they do it for you, but you can do that in the back end of DSpace, and I can't tell you right this second how to do it. I used to do it, but it's a series of, you know, steps that you take, and you can do it by people's names. Depositing data sets. I do have some data sets. They're in our water collection because it was Lake Mead water data that was researched here since the 1940s. So I do have some. I have on my list of things, people to work with this summer is actually the data center here. And I'm also working with the Copyright Transfer Office because, as you know, we have mandates for NIH, and and we also will have more of those government supported research. So so I've had faculty contact me, and I'm working with that office, so you know, if anybody has any questions, we can work back and forth. All right, repository managers complying with public policies when archiving journal articles. Should they comply? Well, you know, I always comply with publisher policies when I archive journal articles. I know people, you know, some managers do various things, but I've seen, you know, Elsevier final copies in repositories, and we're only supposed to have the postprints. But, you know, everybody, I'm taking care of. I'm looking after UNLV's back on, you know, I wouldn't want anyone to contact UNLV and complain or be upset because we weren't following copyright policy. So I follow those guidelines really carefully personally. All right, helping faculty negotiate their authors' rights with publishers. I'm always willing to work with faculty to help them do that. Give them the step-by-step, but very honestly, when they know that we'll do it for them, they're grateful for it, and I like to be a full service service area. So at this point, we're negotiating that for them. I do, when I email them back and forth, I find that teaching faculty, they usually don't save their postprints, whereas library faculty, they have every single one. So it's very telling about the different types of faculty. So I do email them and say, please keep your postprints always. Keep those because we may need them for the repository. So I work with them and quote, educate them on the author's rights so that, when we come up to their next article and the publisher doesn't allow, their final copy, then I can say, okay, we talked about keeping those postprints, and so that's what I'm doing at this point in time. Do I preserve the IR content? I feel as though, I'm not sure what this question exactly means. If it means I preserve it somewhere else, like on our server. I'm not sure what that means. I'm sorry. If you want to write that again, we have a backup server that an external hard drive that we save everything that we put in the repository. It's in our external drive. Because otherwise, all of us can be really big hogs on space on our institutional servers. So we try to be really cognizant about keeping it cleaned up. All right, overcoming typical faculty objections to participation in an IR. Very honestly, I've had zero since I've been at UNLV. Of course, it hasn't been pushed out to the whole campus, but so far, there hasn't been any. RIT, again, we started in 2003 on that very early time, and there were faculty objections because they couldn't wrap their head around it, and that's, in the library world, it took us a while to wrap our brains around, what this meant also. But I just keep focusing on benefits all the time. What are the benefits to them, to their department, to their college and their university, and to the global community of researchers that have no affiliation with academia? And that's always been a problem. And it's just, like in Africa, what are people doing there for their research? How are they getting research? And if you do a Google Analytics for your repository, you can really show that where people are coming from, and and it's not just the locals in the university. It's much more than that. The next question, let's see, talk about the process for metadata creation. Our faculty and staff submitting the digital object, which are then cataloged by technical services staff with schemas. We're doing we are using Dublin Core Plus, and what we do is we're using FAST keywords, and Digital Commons allows us to choose disciplines in the back end. I have asked my connection at Digital Commons to make those disciplines available for search engine optimization, both the back end and the front end. What we do whenever anybody uploads anything in the repository, all those links are gathered by my staff member. They're all emailed to her, and then she sends them on to our metadata person in technical services, and she just opens up those links and she adds the metadata. So it's really efficient. If anybody has any more efficient ideas, let me know. Okay, so I hope I answered that enough, more thoroughly. How much staff do you have to take this much material? Okay, I've already covered that. Yes, when I arrived here at UNLV, the Digital Commons shell was in place. There was like 4 items in it, and so I have had more people coming on board with the repository, and I'm I'm always looking for new people to work in the repository. It's important. The more people we have, the more we can be archiving. Were there any staffing issues with entering documents in the repository from outside sources? And like I mentioned, I have one outside, actually two outside people, the conservation office, a woman, and she also was my intern. So, you know, she has, you know, we have a style sheet for the repository, that materials, and that's something I should have mentioned before, sorry. But there's a style sheet, so it talks about, you know, what gets capitalized, you know, the format, so that, you know, our brains, when they have to hop from one record to another, and let's say the keywords are not alphabetized, some are caps, some are lowercase, there's an adjustment for our brain every time we see something done in a different way. So my feeling is that we should have, you know, everything be as standard as possible so that people can easily read and understand and get what they need when they go from document to document. All right, so I haven't had any issues. Yeah, and then I have the Nevada State Transportation Librarian. Everybody, you know, there's just a few people. They're both, one's studying to be a librarian, one is a librarian, so I have full confidence that, you know, the style guide's being used and we're on the same page. But I just, you know, I just don't let quote anybody upload into the repository, because I already gave my reasons before. Okay, was any of the library staff working with outside materials? Yes, we have so many outside materials. I've never known of a university to have so many conferences and activities and going on. So so yeah, we have lots of outside materials that are related to the university, but they're not produced necessarily by the university. Okay, I've talked about data. Absolutely, the more data the possible. We're just getting started with that. This is about mandates, dean and department head supported mandates. What was the this is a good question. What was the effect with the faculty in these departments? You know, it's interesting because I can only tell you about RIT. I have one mandate actually here at UNLV, but I'll get to that in a second. The faculty in the departments, some of them dug their heels in and they refused. And I never could get materials from them, even though I would send them friendly, smiley emails periodically. Oh, we'd love to have your materials. Send them over. But I found that some faculty were so excited that, and like they are here, there is a mandate here in the School of Environmental and Public Affairs, and there's a mandate there, and so I actually have faculty now just sending me their scholarship on their own because they want to, even though there's a mandate also. So I'm skipping all over, sorry about that, but so they did. Most of them did send based on the mandate, and you know, they got so excited about it that they started updating their CV online or a website that they had. And all of a sudden they just got into this groove of like, this is really important, and so it was really exciting working with these faculty because they really liked it. All right. I have a few more questions. I hope this is okay. I hope we have enough time.
Marianne, I think we're just about out of time.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I know there's more questions here, and maybe we can figure out how we can answer them later.
We will do that.
Okay.
So I'm going to continue with thanking everybody and change this over to my screen, okay? And I'm sorry to have broken in on you. There are so many more good questions, but we are just about out of time. I want to thank you, Marianne, very much for such a thorough overview of the strategies to obtain buy-in for the institutional repository from stakeholders. Your suggestions resonate both with experienced as well as novice IR implementers. To the members of the audience, you will soon receive a short online evaluation form. Please take a few minutes to respond and return the form to us. Your comments and suggestions about our continuing education offerings are most welcome. And we also welcome proposals from you for additional webinar sessions. We have 2 more webinars scheduled in the next few weeks. On May the 25th, Anne Gilliland will discuss intellectual property issues for librarians, and on June 1st, Suzanne Bell and Nathan Saar will report on their experience in developing IR+, an open-source institutional repository platform being implemented at the University of Rochester. As we prepare to sign off this afternoon, I just wanted to take a moment to mention the webinar open house being sponsored by the ALCTS CE Committee during the ALA Annual Conference in New Orleans. If you plan to be in New Orleans in June, please join members of the Continuing Education Committee on Sunday, June the 26th, between noon and 1:30 p.m. to learn about the nuts and bolts of developing and presenting a webinar and experiment with the GoToWebinar software. The open house will be at the Intercontinental Hotel, and you can find additional details on the ALCTS website. As we close down this afternoon, I would like to thank Yuan Lee again for providing technical support for today's webinar. Yuan is a member of the Technical Support Subcommittee, which is part of the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee. And thank you to all our attendees for joining us this afternoon. We hope you found the session useful and that you will participate in other ALCTS continuing education offerings again in the future.